You don't choose the moment. The moment chooses you, and often it doesn't knock politely. It arrives uninvited like news at midnight, a diagnosis, a message that changes the shape of your life before your coffee even cools. Sudden change doesn't ask if you're ready, it just happens. And you, with your plans, your spreadsheets, your 5-year vision board, are left blinking at the debris, wondering what part of you can still stand. That's where we begin. Because the Stoics believed something strange, something most people spend their entire lives resisting. This isn't a glitch. This is the system. They had a name for it. Amor fati. A phrase that's been translated 1,000 ways but never really softened. It means love your fate, not tolerate, not survive, not grit your teeth through it, but love it. Love the betrayal. Love the silence after the phone stops ringing. Love the space left by what's no longer there. Not because it's fair, not because you wanted it, but because in some strange soul-splitting way it's yours. And anything that's yours can be shaped. We live in a culture that tells us to manifest, to visualize, to command the universe with certainty. But fate doesn't follow hashtags. It slips in sideways whispers when you least expect, pulls chairs out from under the illusion of stability. And when it does, the question isn't, why me? The real question is, what now? Because everything that happens, everything you didn't ask for, everything you were sure would destroy you has another layer. A subtext, a whisper beneath a scream, a gift you're too shaken to recognize. The lodgepole pine only releases its seeds in fire. It doesn't bloom in spring. It doesn't wait for comfort. It waits for catastrophe. Some part of you might be like that. Your clarity, your depth, your capacity to love without condition might only emerge after something else falls away. So maybe you lost something, or someone, or maybe more subtly, you just feel like the version of yourself you once knew is slowly dissolving. It's terrifying, but it's also truth. Because becoming isn't polite. It doesn't knock and wait for your permission. It burns, it breaks, it remakes. And the Stoics, they didn't run from that fire. They walked into it barefoot because they knew fire doesn't just destroy, it reveals. Here's the paradox. You can't grow without friction. You can't transform without tension. Comfort is the enemy of character, and fate is often a ruthless sculptor. It will chip away what you thought was essential, only to uncover something quieter, stronger, more precise underneath. So no, you didn't ask for this, but maybe this asked for you. This is what Amor fati demands, that you stop wishing it was different. That you stop narrating yourself as a victim of life. That you stop imagining another version of reality where the pain never came. Because that version doesn't exist. What exists is this moment, this chaos, this cracked open life, this chance to decide who you are in the aftermath. That's the power Stoicism gives you. Not control over events, but authorship of their meaning. So when you lose the job, don't ask what's broken. Ask what's being built. When they leave you, don't spiral. Ask what space their absence has created. When the diagnosis comes, breathe. Not to escape, but to arrive. This is your life. Not the curated one, not the someday one. This, right now. Undone, unfiltered, uninvited. And still entirely yours. If that truth makes something ache, if it makes you feel both exposed and strangely seen, then maybe, just maybe, you've already started the hardest part of the journey. You stopped running. You paused. You listened. And in that silence, where all the old plans fall quiet, a new self begins to whisper. If this moment spoke to something you've been carrying silently, maybe you're ready to carry it differently. You're listening to Silent Sage Stories, where even disruption can feel gentle. They say light travels fastest in a vacuum, but sometimes it doesn't show up until everything else is gone. The plans, the people, the sense of who you were supposed to be. What's left is silence. Not peace, not yet, but silence. And in that silence, something else flickers. A glimmer, a thread, a light you didn't know was buried under the debris. That's what fire does. It doesn't just burn, it clarifies. You may think of loss as an ending, but what if it's also a lens? What if everything that fell apart was showing you where you were never whole to begin with? That job you thought you needed, maybe it was the scaffolding, but not the structure. That relationship you kept patching, maybe it was the echo of something safer, but not something true. That plan that unraveled overnight, maybe it was never yours in the first place. Sometimes life doesn't ruin you, it returns you. The Stoics had a practice. They didn't just react to adversity, they studied it. They wrote, they reflected, they visualized loss ahead of time, not to become numb, but to grow ready. Because when you stop fearing the fire, you start walking differently. Straighter, softer, more sure. Because now you know you're not made of glass. You're made of something that glows after it breaks. Maybe this is the part no one warned you about: the middle. Not the breakdown, not the triumph, but the aching, aimless, identityless middle, where you're no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. It's disorienting. You want answers, you want clarity, you want to fast forward to the part where it all makes sense. But the Stoics would say, stay. Stay in the heat, stay in the discomfort, stay long enough to become fire yourself. If you're still here, if you're still listening, maybe this path is resonating for a reason. If it is, consider subscribing to Silent Sage Stories. We don't chase trends, we don't shout. We just sit with what's real, quietly, honestly. And if that's the kind of space you want more of in your life, click subscribe. Not as a commitment, but as a whisper: I'm walking this path too. And if this moment felt meaningful, a like is more than a metric, it's a signal that these reflections matter to someone besides me. So thank you. Truly. Now let's keep going. Back to the fire. There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. It's easy to read that as poetic. But he wasn't writing poetry. He was writing from war, from plague, from betrayal, from the weight of an empire in decline. He wrote not to inspire others. He wrote to keep himself from falling apart. Because sometimes the only thing more powerful than control is surrender. Surrender not as giving up, but giving in. Leaning into what hurts until you find the place where it stops being pain and starts becoming power. You've probably felt it. The moment when grief turns into insight, when rage becomes resolve, when fear transforms into clarity. Not overnight, not cleanly, but inevitably. Because there's something in you that refuses to stay broken. It rebuilds, even if it has to do it in the dark. Even if it's slow, uneven, silent, it rebuilds. You are not the things you've lost. You are what remains. The steady breath, the quiet decision to try again. The part of you that watched everything fall apart and stayed. That's strength, not the kind that flexes, the kind that endures. So tonight, when the thoughts come, the what-ifs, the should-haves, the looping questions that have no answers, light a candle. Sit in the stillness and say this softly to yourself: I am the fire. I am the seed that survives the flames. I am the light in the ashes. Because you are. And it's only just beginning. Some people pray for the storm to pass. But the Stoics, they learned how to stand in the rain. They didn't ask for life to be easier. They asked to be stronger. Not louder, not richer, just rooted. Because they knew the good life isn't the easy life, it's the earned one. And it's earned through discomfort, Most of us were taught subtly, consistently to chase comfort. Get the job, lock in the plan, find someone who doesn't leave. As if security was the final destination and chaos a detour. But what if it's the opposite? What if chaos is the curriculum? And every disruption is life asking you to deepen, not despair. Aristotle didn't define a good life by pleasure. He defined it by character. Eudaimonia, he called it the flourishing that comes not from ease but from inner excellence. And excellence, that's not something you stumble into. It's forged, under heat, under pressure, when no one is watching, when nothing goes according to plan. It's not about how you act when everything aligns. It's about how you show up when it doesn't. Have you noticed? Some of your deepest wisdom came from your worst days. Not the vacations, not the achievements, but the collapses, the dark nights, the slow mornings after something broke. That's not coincidence. That's design. Because wisdom isn't a reward. It's a consequence. A byproduct of staying conscious while everything in you wants to go numb. You've probably had moments like that, where you thought, I can't do this. But then, you did. Maybe your hands were shaking. Maybe you were screaming on the inside. Maybe you didn't even notice the courage it took because no one clapped. But you didn't fold. You made the call. You walked away. You stayed still when your old self would have chased. And no one saw it. But you did. That's what Stoicism whispers. Strength isn't showy. It's subtle. There's a stillness that comes after the struggle. Not relief, but respect for yourself. For what you endured, for how you didn't abandon your values even when it would have been easier. That stillness, it's sacred. It means you've stopped asking the world to be different and started becoming someone who's ready for any world. The Stoics had a habit of premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils. They would imagine loss before it arrived, not to court misery, but to train their hearts to stay open. Because the more you cling to how things should go, the more fragile you become. The more you accept how life does go, the freer you feel. Imagine waking up not expecting stability, but resilience. Imagine seeing a setback and thinking, of course, this is part of it. Not cynically, not carelessly, but calmly. Like someone who's met pain before and knows how to listen to it. Plato once said, the measure of a person is how they respond to challenge. Not what they say, not what they post, but what they choose when everything's on fire. Because every storm comes with two doors, breakdown or breakthrough. The first requires nothing, the second requires you. So next time life sideswipes you, don't spiral. Don't narrate yourself as cursed. Don't scroll for distraction. Just pause, breathe, and ask, what is this building in me? Maybe it's patience, maybe it's humility, maybe it's the power you didn't know you had. But whatever it is, it's yours now. It didn't arrive gently, but it's here. And it's real. There's a line from the Stoic texts that always lingers. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Not better in the competitive sense. Not more polished, not more popular, but better, as in truer, clearer, more awake. To life, to yourself, to what actually matters. And maybe, just maybe, that's what this chaos has been about all along. It's easy to think the obstacle is the interruption, the glitch, the detour. But the Stoics saw something else. They believed radically quietly that the obstacle is the path. Not because it's pleasant, but because it's precise. Because nothing else reveals you like the moment everything falls apart. Think about it. You've probably grown more from your ruptures than your routines. It wasn't the steady weeks that shaped you, it was the broken ones. The phone call that changed everything. The goodbye you didn't expect. The plan that collapsed overnight. Those weren't side stories. They were turning points. Not in spite of the chaos, but because of it. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, it's our judgment about things." That shift from Why is this happening to... What can I make of this is everything. Because you don't control the wave. But you do control your surfboard. And that's where your power lives. It's not glamorous. It doesn't look heroic. It looks like stillness when your brain wants panic. It looks like breath when your body wants to bolt. It looks like reflection when everything inside you wants to react. But that pause, that's the hinge. That's the difference between repeating the pattern and rewriting the story. Marcus Aurelius didn't theorize these ideas from a peaceful villa. He wrote them while ruling through wars, betrayal, and plague. He watched friends die. He buried children. He governed an empire on the brink. And still he sat with his journal and reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Not as poetry, as survival. What if your greatest pain is also your greatest teacher? Not in some cliché silver lining way, but in the way fire refines gold. The way a collapsed bridge forces you to build wings. The way silence reveals the voice you didn't know you had. Maybe this isn't punishment. Maybe it's precision. Maybe life isn't saying no. Maybe it's editing your path with more clarity than you ever dared to ask for. There's a stillness that comes when you stop resisting. Not passivity, not indifference, but a sacred kind of trust that says, this too is part of it. This too belongs. Like kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. Your scars don't ruin the story. They complete it. Sometimes crisis feels like death. And in a way it is. It's the death of who you thought you had to be. Of the life you tried to force. Of the story you clung to because it felt safe even if it wasn't true. But after death, there's rebirth. Not always fast, not always clean, but real. And often more honest than what came before. So if you're here in the middle of something falling apart, don't rush to fix it. Don't numb it, don't deny it. Sit in it. Ask it what it wants from you. Ask it what it's trying to awaken. Because something is. Even if it doesn't have language yet. Even if it's still sleeping inside the ash. You've survived before. You've rebuilt. You've risen. This isn't new. This is the next layer. The next lesson. The next invitation to become even more of who you're meant to be. And maybe it had to come like this. Through the wreckage. Through the silence. Because you wouldn't have listened otherwise. And that's okay. We all need a little collapse sometimes to finally come home to ourselves. There are days when the weight feels too private to name. Not loud, not dramatic, just quietly heavy. Like you're carrying something no one else can see. And maybe you are. Maybe no one's asked how you're really doing. Maybe even if they did, you wouldn't know how to answer. Because it's not one big thing, it's 1,000 tiny cuts. And somehow you're still standing, still showing up, still pretending it's all fine, even when it isn't. If that's you, hear this. You are not broken. You are becoming. You're not weak for feeling overwhelmed. You're human. And no matter how alone this season feels, it's been felt before. Not in the exact same way, but close enough. Enough for the Stoics to write about it centuries ago in words that still echo now. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, led through war, betrayal, and plague. He buried children. He fought illness. He governed a crumbling empire. And still he wrote. Wrote about virtue. Wrote about peace. Wrote about holding steady when everything else falls. His words weren't polished. They were raw, private. He didn't write for us. He wrote to himself just to make it through. And that's what makes them matter even more. There's power in knowing someone else has stood where you're standing. That your storm isn't a defect, it's a rite of passage. That the ache in your chest has been felt by warriors and sages, poets and philosophers. That what you're facing isn't a personal failing, it's the human condition. And the fact that you're still here, still reflecting, still willing to feel, that's not weakness, that's resilience. The quiet kind, the kind that doesn't post about itself, the kind that just keeps going. Stoicism isn't about suppressing the pain, it's about reframing it. It's the language for what we never learned how to say. It gives structure to the shapeless, light to the unnamed. Like when you're spiraling and then you read, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgment about things. And suddenly you pause. Or when you feel like life's not fair and you remember, what stands in the way becomes the way. And suddenly you breathe. That's what philosophy can do. Not explain away your suffering, but help you hold it. Not numb the ache, but give it meaning, so that even in the dark you're not lost. You're on a path, and others have walked it. They didn't walk out unscarred, but they walked out stronger, softer, wiser. And so will you. Carl Jung said loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. But here's the miracle of Stoicism. It communicates for you. It whispers back when your thoughts get too loud. It steadies your breath when your hope begins to shake. And maybe most important, it reminds you that this isn't just your fight. It's ours. So when life knocks you sideways and you're tempted to armor up, don't. Stay soft, stay open, stay here. Because someone out there, maybe a stranger, maybe someone watching this video with you feels it too. Your quiet courage, your silent strength, your stubborn refusal to give up on peace even when everything feels like war. This is the path, not of noise, but of nuance, not of control, but of clarity, not of perfection, but of presence. And if it feels lonely, that's okay. Because loneliness too is a teacher. It strips away the noise. And what remains is truth. And in that truth, you will find others. Not always loud, but always there. Walking beside you, step by quiet step. There's a strange kind of spiral that starts with something small. A headline, a text, a moment of silence that feels too long. Suddenly your brain's sprinting 10 steps ahead, imagining collapse, gripping for control you never really had. But the Stoics had a compass for this chaos. A razor-sharp reminder in just one line. Some things are up to us. Some things are not. Epictetus. That's not resignation. That's power. Because the moment you separate what's yours from what isn't, you breathe again. You can't control the economy. You can't control someone else's tone. You can't control what happens tomorrow morning or next year or 5 minutes from now. But you can control your focus, your interpretation, your response. And that's enough. That's more than enough. But let's be honest, it's hard. It's hard not to spiral, not to micromanage, not to tense your shoulders every time the world gets loud, especially when everything around you demands your reaction. The news, the noise, the people who mean well but keep projecting their panic onto you. The Stoics didn't deny that chaos exists. They just refused to let it run their lives. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wrote that while leading a fractured empire, while burying loved ones, while being betrayed by those closest to him, he wasn't writing from comfort. He was writing from the storm. And that's what makes it real. Power isn't control. Power is response. It's not about making the storm stop. It's about staying calm within it. It's choosing not to be pulled by every emotional current. It's pausing even just for one breath to ask, is this in my control? If the answer is no, let it go. If the answer is yes, take action. Quietly, consistently. This isn't apathy, it's mastery. And it's a muscle, built slowly through 1,000 small choices. Choosing to stop the mental movie before it plays all the way out. Choosing to breathe before reacting. Choosing not to text back just to feel in control again. That's discipline, not the loud kind, the quiet, internal kind. The kind that builds strength you don't need to prove. Socrates said, "Let him who would move the world first move himself." That doesn't mean you shouldn't care about the world. It means Start with the only arena where your vote always counts. Yourself, your inner weather, your inner posture, your inner choice. Because once you realize that that is your domain, everything shifts. There's a peace that lives on the other side of surrender. Not giving up, not checking out, but surrendering to what's out of your hands so you can finally use what is in them. Your breath, your journal, your next word, your next step. That's your zone of power. Stay there, again and again and again. And when you fall out of it, because you will, that's okay. That's practice. That's how virtue is built. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So every time you redirect from panic to presence, from blame to breath, from fear to focus, you're shaping who you become. And that's real power. Quiet, steady, self-built. The world gets loud sometimes. Fast, chaotic, unforgiving. You wake up with a plan, but by noon everything is shifted. Someone lets you down, something falls through, or maybe nothing dramatic happens. Just the slow, invisible erosion of your peace. A drip, a doubt, a pressure you can't name. It's in those moments you might forget who you are. You might bend, you might want to hide. You might even wonder if you're built for a world this unpredictable. But the Stoics, they saw this coming. They didn't promise you clarity. They gave you tools. They didn't hand you a roadmap. They handed you a compass. And one of the most powerful metaphors they offered was simple. Be like the emerald. Not like glass. Not like smoke. But like stone. Solid. Centered. Unmoved by the storm. The emerald doesn't shout, doesn't argue with the darkness. It simply is, radiant, unbothered, steady. It doesn't need to change the world around it to be itself. It just continues shining regardless. That's your blueprint. Not perfection, not control, but clarity. You don't need ideal conditions to be your strongest self. You don't need applause to stay rooted in your values. You don't need everything to go your way to stay true to your way. What you need is to stop abandoning yourself when things get loud. To stop shape-shifting every time the world sends you static. To stop mistaking noise for truth. You are not here to bend to every breeze. You are not here to over-explain your stillness. You are here to anchor, to remain, to listen deeply even when the world forgets how. Because in that stillness, something awakens. Something strong, something ancient, something unshakable. Plato believed that the soul has a natural order, that our life's work is to bring reason, desire, and emotion into harmony. That harmony doesn't come from outside validation. It comes from inner alignment. And that alignment, it begins the moment you stop running from silence and start listening to it. So when the world feels like it's closing in, when the headlines scream, when the plans break, when your chest tightens and your mind spirals, pause. Don't resist the storm. Don't try to outthink the wave. Just whisper to yourself, I am still me. I don't fold. I don't shake. I shine. Because that's your light, not a spotlight, not a flare, just a steady glow that says, I've been through worse. And I am still here. I don't need the world to calm down for me to find my calm. I don't need approval to live in alignment. I don't need certainty to walk with clarity. And when people misunderstand, because they will, that's okay. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to understand yourself, to remain whole when the world feels split, to hold peace when peace isn't popular, to walk your path with gentleness, with depth, with courage. So here you are, at the end of the noise, the end of the lesson, the edge of the light. And before we go, let me say one last thing. You don't need to become anyone else. You just need to return to who you were before the world taught you to fear your stillness. That stillness isn't emptiness. It's space, it's power, it's you. And if this journey stirred something in you, some quiet knowing, some small flame, don't let it fade. Let it burn steady. Let it guide you back to yourself again and again. Because the world may shift, the waves may rise, but the emerald remain. Thank you for walking this quiet path with us. If this message resonated, leave a like, subscribe, and share it with a soul who walks softly but deeply. Your presence matters. Your calm is contagious. Until next time, stay steady.